You know, I read every comment. Now, some comments somehow get lost. So even though I actually want to answer that comment, I'm unable to because I can't find it. Usually what happens is it comes up in a notification, and when I turn my phone on, which is what I do everything from, is my cell phone, and it will say so and so commented on your some video, right? And then it'll give me part of it, but not enough to know what was being said. So then I put in my password, and then I go back and look for the notification, and I click on it. But somehow some of these things get lost. It doesn't pull up the appropriate comment that was made, and so I lose it, and even though I wanted to comment on it, I'm not able to. So some people might think that I ignored their comment. I actually had a comment from a friend who is building his house, and he made a comment about something that I'd said, I think, on building houses, because he's in the process of building a house. So, Scott, I've missed your comment, but it got lost in cyberspace, and who knows what it was about. You can always comment again or message me if it's important. So I do look through the comments, and we started, well, when Beth and I started, we decided that we would have what I call a feel-good channel, and we've since found out that actually the bad comments, which can elicit a response from our good guys. So when you start doing a channel, you'll quickly find out that there are good guys and bad guys, and there are silent guys that don't make any comments at all. Well, the bad guys will have their way. They'll do what they do best, and the good people will become friends and subscribers, and often very good friends. Now, obviously what we do our videos on are based on what we think people will be interested in. Now, I don't know why, but people often accuse us of doing things for views. Oh, let me see. How does that work? We are blogging, and we depend on views, and we're being accused of working just for views, but it's crazy. But sometimes I get both good and bad and ugly. I get a comment which actually touches me, because it illustrates how far we have become divided as people, as humans, as the species. That, remember that song, "He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother"? I always remember that song, that whatever happens, he's my brother. And knowing how much I love my brother, who passed away in his 50s, and he was much beloved by a lot of people. Long after he in the last part of his life, he was a plumber. He was a lot of things in his life which were really interesting. He was the fireman. He was the fireman on a steam locomotive in his younger days, and then of course steam was phased out, wasn't it? My brother never forgave the world for taking out steam. He loved that job and would have become an engine driver in time. And I've written a book, a story about my brother. Well, he died when he was in his 50s. I felt very, very close to my brother because while he was still alive, both of our parents passed. And when I was at the funeral of my father, who was the last to go, we made a pact between my brother and I that we would call each other. We only lived 200 miles apart, but in England that is a huge amount. So he lived in Manchester, which is where I was born, both of us born. He lived there and I lived in London. And I was a musician, had a very different life to my brother. So we made a pact. We said that we would call each other. You could do cheap phone calls at the time, and for many years we called each other every week and shared the news. We shared the news, good and bad. Oh, I'm being inundated on my nice new tiles with ants. Well, anyway, as I said, I love my brother. Now, remembering these things and remembering how what family can mean to you is important when you come to the Philippines, because the Philippines is all about family. And here's where, in my humble opinion, here's where I think that foreigners go wrong. But maybe for them they're not going wrong, because they're pursuing their way of life and their lifestyle, and they don't integrate. I remember when I first got here, I was introduced to someone who was a neighbour. I went to church and his wife was there at church, and she invited me to her home to meet her husband, who was also a foreigner. And I remember I asked him, so I was a newcomer, okay, so I'm green. He'd been here for many years, over 10 years. And I asked him, do you speak the language? And he said, no, I don't speak the language. Why would I want to speak the language? I was shocked. Well, so that you can interact with the people. Why would I want to interact with the people? And this is an attitude that lots of foreigners have. And so they remain separate from the Filipino people. They don't get caught up in the culture. And if you have made up your mind that you are separate, you're not going to learn anything. So in spite of the wealth of lessons that are there for learning from the Filipino people, you're not going to get that. So all of that treasure is lost on you. So back to my brother. Knowing that how I felt about my brother and how much I missed him. When I first came here, I was almost of the same opinion about how I was going to lead my life. I knew that I had 2 modest pensions, which were enough, in spite of what people may say in the comments, was enough for Beth and I to actually live comfortably, if not extravagantly. So that's what, in our early conversations, I said, look, there's a couple of things that you need to know about me. I'm not rich. I have 2 modest pensions which we can live on comfortably and without working. Now this is being wealthy in a Filipino view. So that was one. And the other thing, which was very important to me, was that I don't do drugs of any kind. Even now, if I have a headache, well, I have a headache, and I'll find somewhere on my head to rub, or at the back here. You can go on YouTube and find a way to cure all your headaches and your aches and pains, and I do that. So even now, I don't do drugs. So I don't do drugs. I don't do pharmaceutical aids to comfort. I don't do prescription drugs. The doctor that we have is always completely loses it with me. What's the point in you coming to see me if you're not going to take the drugs that I give you? So he loses it, and I understand that. So I don't do recreational drugs. I'm quite happy with the reality that I see, and I work on how I see that reality all the time. So things are a lesson to me, and I gain from it, because instead of thinking that I know everything, I think that there's always something to learn in the way that someone is. So I came here, and with only the modest pensions that I have, which would feed me and Beth, and I learned that there would be a limited amount of help that I could give to family, but that because I'm not rich, I can't, every time that someone comes and asks for help, I'm not going to be able to say yes. But here's the fallacy. If you establish in your family, your extended family, that you are willing to help and that you never say no, quickly you will become an extension of their economy. And when they run short, well, they can always run to you. If you establish that that's the way that it is, we never did that. So the way that we handle it is that we, because we have a channel to run, okay? We have a channel and we have a charity to run. So we have things that need to be done. So we pay. You need, like Balalut is the young son of, teenage son of Rado, my brother-in-law. And we give him work. And he has now learned to be a helper and quite skilled in his own way on the building that we do of houses and help that we give. And he runs about, he's got a motorcycle, so we help him and he gets paid. He helps us and we help him. And that's how we run that family. But when I first looked at it, I would see my brother, who is the favourite son, if I may say that, I'm going to say that anyway. He's the favourite son of Nanai, my mother-in-law. And I would see him night after night, and he would eat at Nanai's. Well, Nanai is my mother-in-law, and the way that I feel about that is looking back on how good a son I was to my own mother, my parents. I'm actually ashamed of that, and I feel that I should have done more for my parents, but I didn't, and the chance is gone now. So now I have Nanai, and it's my chance to try to be a good son, even though she's actually younger than I am. Okay, right, it's my chance to be a good son. So when I saw Rado eating it, at first I said to Beth, we just don't have the money to be able to support these extra mouths to feed. I understood later that that was not the way to think about it. And I began to look at my brother-in-law as my brother. And as I looked at my brother, I realized that if it had been my brother Neville who came night after night needing a meal, I would have given that with open heart. And that made me look at my brother-in-law, Rado, in a different way. He is my brother. Now, I'm going to take a break here because the rain has started and I know that it will be affecting the sound.